All right. So we have information that is not confirmed. I think I might have done a video on this stuff already once before, but it's the PlayStation 5 Pro, PlayStation 6. Let's go into a bunch of stuff of, there's been discussions, there's been topics talked about. So as you can see up over here, spec analysis, PlayStation 5 Pro, the most powerful console yet. So Richard Ledbetter, he is the one that made Digital Foundry. And this is actually basically, Digital Foundry did a DF clips video where they talked for 10-15 minutes, I think it was, and that's what really sparked the idea for this video, where they were talking about, what is, do we need a PS5 Pro? Is there reasons to end up going into making new hardware? Would you, as a consumer, want to buy new hardware and everything? So I wanted to go through and do a bunch of bulletin points myself, give my thoughts on it because I've been covering this stuff ever since PS4 Pro basically. And I'm also curious to see kind of an in-depth view on what everybody's been talking about here. So we're going to read a little bit of Richard's post here from March 19th. And then also I'm going to go into my own personal thoughts of, explaining some of the stuff and everything. So let's see here. First of all, it addresses the authentic. Okay, so actually, we'll just start from the top. So the machine is ready. It's coming relatively soon, and by and large, the leaks are accurate. Now, the thing would that my biggest thing when it comes to leaks and everything is that until Sony officially says something, I do not believe leaks and I do not believe rumors. Until it is officially announced, my stance is it doesn't actually exist. So all these leaks and everything, people nowadays will leak, they'll put out information that is not true. That is, just because Digital Foundry and Richard is saying all this stuff, it does not still make it true at all because people are putting out information just so they can get engagement farming and clicks and likes and views and all that stuff. So until Sony says yes, we are working on this, which very well could be in the next couple months, they could be end up making like a state of play or something, or a future PlayStation press conference, or maybe around so June is Summer Games Fest, and a lot of times June is like the E3 season, as everybody likes to call it. It's the gaming holiday season, basically, where all the new stuff gets announced, gets talked about. If there's new hardware, that's when we end up seeing it. So, does the leaks go in with the timeline of when all the gaming, news, the biggest time of the year for gaming news? Yes, it kind of does, but at the same time, again, we'll get into the reason why it's not exactly, need to have a new console on the market. And Sony right now is doing so good. Like, do they want to? They just rebranded and republished basically the PS5 into a slim model of it. Now, of course, that's when everybody goes. I mean, 3-4 years ago, we were hearing about a PS5 Pro. It was like 2 years after the game console, after the PS5 launched. Everybody's like, "Well, where's the Pro version of it? Oh my God, there's an upgrade or whatever." We are getting towards the 5 year mark. This is about 4.5 years roughly of when the PS5 launched. At 5 year marks, usually we do see a Pro version coming out. Now, I don't if there is a Pro version and they're trying to say it's later on this year. I don't know about that either. I think if anything, 5 years come out with the PlayStation 6, and then well, anyways, we'll get into that. So let's see here. So first of all, let's address the authenticity of the leaks we've seen thus far, which essentially operates on two levels. First of all, Inside Gaming's Tom Henderson has a spotless record in revealing new PlayStation hardware. Spotless is definitely to be in. That's there is some stuff where Tom Henderson, he will also be one of those that he posts something and he will post 3 or 4 different things that could come true, and then one of them comes true, and then everybody says he has a spotless record. So again, he is a leaker, rumor mill guy. He works for Inside Gaming, just like Richard is working for Eurogamer. Everybody's trying to make a buck off from these posts. As much as I definitely like Digital Foundry, Tom has some good information. Everybody's still trying to make a dollar off from all the information is money. So just keep that in mind. Revealing new PlayStation hardware from the existence of the PlayStation Portable through the PS5 Slim. The thing is, though, PlayStation Portable, Tom was saying that was going to be a new Vita, like a Vita 3.0 or something like that, and it wasn't at all. PS5 Slim, it's 5 year mark, so of course everybody. I mean, I was hearing about a PS5 Slim like it's on the 3 year mark, and then a PS5 Pro is like on the 2 year mark. So it's just people putting out information just to be like, oh, see, told you, we got this. Second tier of leak is more understandable and some might say inevitable. The key details seen recently come from documents around the PlayStation's DevNet portal, which we're looking at here in wide scale disclosure of third party developers, publishers. Almost certainly a leak immediately to PS4K or PS4 and a half. Yeah, da da da. Project Trinity is setting out to achieve similar to PS4 Pro, called the standard PS5 by now by Sony, but offers enhancements. So, PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution PSSR technique. So that is the only thing that is making me go, maybe a PS5 Pro could be in the works if they are looking into a PSSR technology, as they're calling it, PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. I'm never going to remember that, so I'm just going to call it PSSR. So that's essentially, it's like DLSS, but it's also ray tracing capability built in there too, which of course the PS5 can already do ray tracing. It just does a lower FPS than normal, but there is some games that do higher frame rates. We'll get into that. So the spec sheets, let's bring it on over to here. So this is the spec sheet here. So the PS5 has 8 core, 16 Zen 2, 3.5. This one's looking at 8 core, 16 thread Zen 2, 3.5, and it can up boost itself up to an 3.85. Now, that's not a whole lot more CPU. The GPU, this would make sense on these leaks here for the PSSR. So if the GPU, so the CPU should actually be all right. I'm running a low end CPU in my gaming rig, and if you look at any of the videos where I pop on DLSS, DLSS does a ton of heavy lifting. We'll get into that also. Dragon's Dogma 2, I'm going to show you some stuff when it comes to optimizing a game engine. We'll get into that a little bit later on, but yes, RDNA 3, RDNA 2. So RDNA 3, if this thing can run FSR 3 and or a form of FSR 3, and that turns into PSSR, that's good. So FSR 3 is a way of super sampling images so you can actually, it takes a lot of stress off from the processor of rendering, and it actually makes it so it's easier for a smoother video to be rendered, basically more frames to be put up on screen. Even if they are somewhat like fake frames, it's still doubling up the smoothness on the image quality, which is good. That's fine. It can introduce some latency, not issues, but it's just a tiny bit more latency. So if you have a 1 millisecond monitor, you might be going up to 3 milliseconds or 4 milliseconds, which is actually technically what happens anyways. When you hit a button on the controller, it's never 1 millisecond to your display. That's a marketing term. Let's see here. So the teraflops thing, this is nice, having almost triple the teraflops, which is GPU clock speed, which means you can actually, so instead of having the stuttering happening between the frames, you can actually push those frames faster out. So you have, you can double up the frames using the PSSR, but then also the amount of stuttering can be reduced, majorly from the extra teraflop. It's basically extra system resources, which we're going to say that term a lot here. So let's see here, 18 gigs versus the 14 gigs. That's always a good thing to have there. Also, again, more system resources, the better. And this is one of the things too with this. So the developers are basically saying like, we haven't even hit the full maximum of the PS5. And then all the rumor leaker mill people are all pushing of like, oh man, we need a new console and everything. And if you're looking at like the current lineup of games, I've been having some issues. Let's talk about Dragon's Dogma 2. That's been the newest one as of right now. I am kind of dating this video. It's fine. But Dragon's Dogma, it launched terribly on the consoles. It ran kind of rough on the... it's very similar to how Cyberpunk was when it launched also. And the whole thing is like system resources. Like you need more system resources than what the consoles have to be able to run the game properly. Which means that the hardware, it doesn't mean that the hardware is getting old. It really does not mean that the PlayStation 5 is underpowered. What it means is that these developers that are making these games, all of a sudden they're trying to make an open world game, but they're normally making story driven linear games. So the level design goes majorly into this factor. So over here is a kind of a blackboard situation here that we got going on, and I'm so a linear map, like I said. So when a game development studio is trying to make a linear map, they will make the map. It will and all everything that is in the map is already pre-rendered. You as a player start, let's say right here, and as you're running through the map and doing everything, everything is already rendered. Everything is already on that course, so you see it. It's already right there. It's already rendered. Now, when when you're trying to make something that is free roam and you are a development studio that is used to doing that type of a rendering pipeline, as they call it, the difference is if you're doing a free roam, you start off as a player on the map here. You have a square around you that you can see. You can see all the stuff that's around you. The thing is whichever direction that you're going to head. So if you go forward, it's going to render another square of the map, and it's gonna populate it and everything. So you see all that stuff. You're going to end up having pop in because you have all this map that it's trying to render. What it's trying to also do is render this and this and this. So wherever you look, if you spin the camera around real quickly, you're still going to see a less detailed version, but all this stuff is still going to be here. And then once you look in that direction, so say you turn around and you look over here, now you're going to have fully rendered detail over there, but all this stuff over here is going to, this side of the map is just going to turn into smaller detailed. So what we end up seeing with like Dragon's Dogma 2 is the fact of it's not that the PlayStation has, aging hardware or it's low powered or anything. It's the fact that the game developers don't know how to render in this way of rendering. They don't know how to do that type of pipeline. What they know how to do is make one solid map that you are jumping into and populate it with a bunch of stuff. So it comes down to the developers just trying to do something that they're not it's using Dragon's Dogma 2. It is the RE engine. It's the same type of development team and everything that makes like Resident Evil games. Those look great. They run smooth. That you can run them on pretty much anything. It's like the RE engine is very, very versatile that way. But if you don't have a development team that knows how to make that, Elden Ring, for another example, has had the same thing where Elden Ring FromSoft is so great at making levels that you start off, you start off in one area over here, and then you run around that area. There's a door here that leads into another area. Then you have a door over here, and you have a door over there. But then what ends up happening is you snake around, and this area over here leads into another little passageway over here. Maybe there's a little corridor there. And so you're snaking around doing all that, and then the big, what I call the loop around. So then you end up back here at the central hub once again. That means that this whole map right here is already pre-rendered. Everything is already, that loading screen that you're hitting, or a lack of a loading screen, when you're opening the door, that's your loading screen. It's making the rooms and everything that's connected to it very quickly. And then when you end up over, so we'll say there's a door over here, and then you go down to this area over here, this actually disappears. I would think it either disappears or it goes into a very just like the room is there, but nothing's rendered in it. And that's what is, saving space right there. So this whole room is just, it's there for when you go back there, but it's pretty much, it's either empty or it's not there. Maybe it is, who knows? It all depends on the engine, on, how much details of the textures and everything else. And this is the other thing too. Every time you see a texture on a wall, that's using system resources. Every time an animation plays, that's using system resources. Everything uses system resources. So having more CPU clock speed, GPU, all that stuff is a good thing. And that's where a lot of your rumor mill, leaker mill people are coming out with like, we need a bigger console. It's a good thing to have bigger hardware, of course, to be able to do more with it. But it's not absolutely necessary. And one of the things that we should really talk about, because it's being talked about on the daily now, is Grand Theft Auto 6. Can Grand Theft Auto 6 be run on a PS5, regular PS5 that we have now? And also the slim version is the same version of the PS5 as what's the day one version is. The biggest difference in between the slim is just they redid the shell of it, and I guess we can bring it back over here. But they redid the shell of it, and basically they made the hard drive, detachable, so that makes it a slim version. That's the biggest difference. The hardware inside it, though. So if we're looking at the PS5 Slim, all the PS5 data or specs right there would be the exact same as that PS5. Again, the hardware is the exact same. It's just the shell is different and a detachable hard drive, which makes it a slim unit. But can GTA 6? And again, this is the big question in the room right now. Can GTA 6 run at 60 FPS? And my answer would be yes. It could. It can. I actually haven't paid attention to what anybody else is saying on this, and their arguments, because I think everybody at this point is just like, oh my god, there's new hardware, and in all honesty, it could. They would probably put it on like medium or mid tier settings, accustomed to what a PC would run. Maybe not though, because this is custom hardware on the PS5, and on top of that, if Rockstar is just launching GTA 6 on the PS5, they are able to do way more optimization on the PS5 version of the game and make it so it runs top notch. We've seen Red Dead 2. Now, there's a reason why Red Dead 2 doesn't have a 60 FPS patch. Red Dead 2 came out on the PS4. It launched on the PS4, so it's still running on PS4 settings. We have not had a PS5 version. Rockstar doesn't want to take the time enough to optimize it and put out a PS5 version of it. Of course, that also takes marketing. It takes R&D. It takes and it seems like all hands are on deck on GTA 6 outside of the online development team. It seems like more and more, I should say, is all hands are on deck for GTA 6, trying to get made and out the door. It's been in development for a long time now, even for modern day development. But yes, do I think GTA 6 is going to run at 60 FPS on the PS5? Yes, but you won't have ray tracing, and you won't have I think what we're going to end up seeing is, I think the PSSR thing might be able to translate over to the current PlayStation 5 that we have now. So if we have a PS5 Pro, it will help the PSSR work, but I don't think we need a Pro for the PSSR to actually function. I think we can have a software update and actually add it into the current hardware, unless it is an AI solution, which I don't know if ray tracing is AI though, so it might still be there. This is one of those things where it's hard to tell, because you need to be kind of a full-on game developer in PlayStation Studios and know exactly what is the true potential of the PS5. And the thing is, one of these dev teams could actually push the hardware farther than anybody else even thinks is possible. Just look at Ghost of Tsushima, Spider-Man 2, God of War Ragnarok, like all these different games that have come out that everybody's just jaws hit the floor. We see it every console generation with this stuff. We've hit the maximum, we've hit the top tier, we've hit the ceiling, and then something happens, something comes out, and everybody's like, whoa. It happens over and over and over again. Okay, so a little bit of a example on all this stuff of how the consoles, how the PC would be working. So, consoles, so PlayStation 5 Pro, or even just the PlayStation 5, would be using FSR 3, which is it's fidelity, super resolution. This is what AMD tech normally runs. So the PSSR would be possibly something that is more akin to DLSS. hopefully, which would be an AI targeted thing. You notice over here on the right hand side is the graphics memory usage. So if we turn on FSR, it goes down to 7.74. That's on quality. We bring up to performance, it brings up to 7.66. Now, if we do DLSS, we're getting a little bit less. It's roughly around the same amounts of VRAM that you're having to use, but they are different. Also, if you look at the image too, there's different scales of rendering that is happening. So high image quality at faster frame rates, lower resolution input to improve frame rates. So what the PlayStation is already doing right now is it uses checkerboard rendering, where it is doing a form of DLSS, where it is lowering down the resolution, but then when you bring this up to put in performance mode, what it's doing is it's doing a checkerboard rendering where it's using basically AI sampling as such to fill in the holes where the image is not rendering properly. Or not rendering at all, so that you can you're losing pixels, which brings down your resolution, but then it reconstructs pixels using the technology, the super sampling technology, to end up basically give the image a clearer quality while also holding on to frame rate. So we're going to turn off both of these. We got ray tracing on, and in the menu, if you notice up top left hand corner, it says 120 FPS. Everything is pretty much set to high values, high textures. Ray tracing is on. Screen space reflections would be the actual, ray trace reflections are on. So let's keep everything on. So this would be essentially also I'm running a 3060 with an i7 8700. So essentially I'm just like, maybe my CPU is one step underneath the PS5. My graphics card, I think, might be one step above the PS5 as it normally stands now. So my graphics card would basically be a PS5 Pro. My CPU would be just under that. Equivalent wise. So let's go back to the gameplay. Let's see what frame rate we're going to drop down to 30 FPS. As you can tell, if I move the camera, it looks ever so slightly. It's not stuttery. It's still got the smoothness there because we are staying on 30 FPS. Again, RE Engine, it scales very, very well. You've seen Resident Evils and everything else. First, we'll do FSR on a performance mode, and everything basically stays on. Depending on if the developers know how to get this to render at a solid frame rate, they might turn this off. They might turn it on to where you have no reflections. That's the reason why in some games you see reflections when you turn on ray tracing. Some games you don't see them. We'll try keeping screen space reflections on. Let's see if we can keep it over 60 FPS. So we're going to save. And so now we're looking at, again, smoother frame rates. If I spin the camera around a little bit, you're seeing 60 FPS, just about locked, which is good. That's actually very good. FSR is running, so this is an FSR working on an RTX card, not an AMD card, which that is a bit of a difference there. RTX would be actually, it's higher performance than the AMD spec cards for the most part. There can be some game engines that just are optimized on AMD hardware, but still, RTX cards kind of power through everything. So let's, again, try and do now DLSS. So if FSR would be to do a performance mode similar to a DLSS, and the cool thing is we can also do a low latency mode on there to help out with any latency issues, while we still have, again, I have not turned off ray tracing, I have not turned off reflections. So now let's test it again. We should be looking at roughly the same quality FPS. I was thinking maybe we might get a little bit more. I think we're getting just slightly 4 or 5 more frames. Maybe not. It is starting to have a little bit of pop in the background, but that's also probably shader cache. stuff because
Where are you
that's the
going?
difference in between
I'll not
a
force you to
console
receive treatment, but
and a
I'd at
PC.
least
There is
like a
shader
word.
cache that ends up happening. Um, but again, this is the difference that all developers are going through of like, okay, which settings do we want to turn on and off? Now, again, one more thing that we can actually do is if we come into here and we go back to FSR mode and we turn off reflections. For some reason, my ray tracing is stuck on. I don't know why that's happening, but now we turn off reflections. Now reflections, so ray trace lighting is different than ray trace reflections. Reflections are essentially trying to do a mirror inside the game world. That takes a lot more system resources. And lighting usually doesn't hit hard. Sometimes it will, depending on how dynamic the ray trace lighting is. Yeah. Okay. So because ray tracing is still on, so we just turned off. Let's go over to the water real quick.
Where do you think you're going?
We'll see
You can't just run off now.
what the difference is here. Can we see ourselves in the water or not? So I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I just turned it off. We're getting roughly about 70 FPS, so 10 FPS more. Which again, 10 FPS, you can actually see it. That's noticeable. Let's turn this back down to. I'm curious to see. Okay, so screen space reflections are off right now. Let's try DLSS with the latency mode on, with no screen space reflections. And again, this is the perfect title to test all this stuff out with because it is such a chunky game engine. Or the game engine itself, this is a game engine built for a more linear game design where, like I said, it's pre-built map, you're running around. This one is loading stuff.
Where are you going?
As we're looking around.
I'll
That's
not
why you have
force you to
pop-in
receive
happening,
treatment,
because
but I'd at
Capcom
least
is
like a word.
not a free roam developer. They are more of a set piece developer. So now actually let's turn on reflections again. One more change here to see the reflections in the water, see how drastically different it looks. Not a ton of difference. You can definitely see like the rocks over here are there. I don't know if they were there before. You're seeing more detailing in the water. I wouldn't say it's dramatically different, but we're definitely seeing more detailing in the water. And the cool thing is, we're actually not taking a dip in FPS. If anything, we're actually holding steady up there. So again, if my hardware can keep this thing running at roughly 70 FPS, the PS5 has more headroom than what everybody's trying to let on. So these are the reasons why I also get so frustrated with a lot of the online rumor mill stuff. Now, one more thing to go into, which this one is kind of more of a funny, probably more of a funny little thing than anything. But what would a PlayStation 6 look like? So this is the test kit of the PS5. And we've seen this over the years. I think it was again, like 3 years after the PS5 came out, everybody was like, oh my God, these test kits. I don't think this is actually a real thing. I really don't think this is a real thing. I was seeing this same exact test kit since the PS5 was in a prototype state. I think this is some old render. Everybody's trying to say that it's the newest, highest thing. This thing's been around forever. So we have a PlayStation test kit, and probably a bunch of, because the more system resources that you're pushing at it, so the bigger the CPU, the hotter it runs. And this is like one of these reasons why you have to have water coolers now. You can't just run fans in the more high-end PC setups, because it will cook it. Well, it's not going to cook itself. It's going to downclock itself, and that's the thing that you're trying so hard not to have happen. You can do liquid metal cooling, which is what we see a lot in the PlayStation 5 as of right now. There's pads. There is thermal paste, and different ways of keeping all the components cooled. So my first thing that I guess I'm like halfway joking with this setup, but also it's kind of weird getting towards that. If we keep going hotter and pushing more voltage, which the power draw and the voltage is what makes the hardware run hotter, because it's trying to work harder, so it's causing more heat to build up. So my big brain theory right now is that the next gen, which might be the last gen, that's something else that we could get into talking about too. But the next gen of consoles, whether it's a PS5 Pro or 6 or whatever, um, maybe this is more of a PlayStation 6 type of situation, but this thing right here so this is a laptop water cooler for laptops that run very hot. They have a very giant CPU in it, but it's a water cooler. It's the same thing as having the water cooler system in your water cooling system in your PC in your desktop PC. So they could actually make a external one that runs through the PlayStation 5 system. And I know a lot of people will probably be laughing at that, but if we were getting to the power draw usage where it's like, how are we going to keep this thing cool without itself, downclocking? Because it will not, it won't cook itself, it will downclock. If your system cooks itself and it overheats and it's blue screen and everything, it's because you don't have enough airflow around it. It should be able to keep itself actually standardly cool. Now, my other big guess is probably we're going to be seeing the exact same type of maybe possibly, and this would be a selling point to me, is a PlayStation 5 Pro see an update on the controller of some kind. Since the controller is getting towards the 5 year mark now, maybe they package in the DualSense Edge controller with the PS5 Pro. That would be a big selling point there, along with the extra FSR or the extra PSSR, built-in stuff. Where if PSSR, they can show in video form that they are indeed actually running games, smoother with better frame rates. Then that would be a big selling point for me. Now, the other thing, and this again, this is kind of a joke, but we are getting to that point where discs, I mean, I think it was like Final Fantasy is a few discs or something like that. Discs are becoming such a thing of the past. Like, oh, I want a physical copy of my game and everything. Well, I think, and this is something that people are not talking about at all, of how are they going to store GTA 6 all on like three or four, eight, six, eight discs? How big is GTA 6 going to be? Is it going to be a terabyte? Is it going to be 100 gigs? What is it going to be? So I think, and again, this is a bit of a joke, but at the same time, it's kind of the reality situation that your new games are not going to come on a disc anymore. I think the future of the new games is actually going to be like a little mini hard drive. So you end up buying a mini hard drive that's 10, 20 gigs, something like that. And then maybe you have an update. And if you don't, if maybe if they don't want to have updates and people are, because they keep throwing the fit about, well, I just want to physically own the thing. Well, okay, you buy a hard drive that has the full 150, 200 gigs, whatever it is, and you fit it on a little 200 gig hard drive. That's what you end up buying. So instead of it being a disc case, you basically would get a box, and then you pull the hard drive out and then plug the hard drive into the USB port. And if the next PlayStation has like 4 or 5 USB ports on it, then there you go. You run the game off from an SSD, of course. That is a little 200 gig SSD. And if you look at the price, now here's where it is a bit of a joke. So essentially, in your PlayStation, this is what you are actually running: is a Samsung hard drive. 250 gig, but normally all the PlayStations come with a 1 terabyte. So what they could end up doing, this is $50 right here, $45 for a Samsung SSD hard drive. Technically, it's on sale apparently, and with that, I could see like that be the new standard thing of, you're paying $50 just for, because I mean, really, okay, so you're paying for the license rights, and then they add on another $20 for the SSD itself. So they sell the SSD at a half cut cost, which is the same thing as they've been doing with discs for years now. This would actually make sense. This would actually make sense that it would come on a little hard drive instead of a disc. Because what are you going to do? You're going to start packaging in more and more discs. That's going to cost everybody in the long run more and more. The price is going to start going up to like $80 a game, if you keep going at that rate. So this actually cost effectively makes more sense just to do a hard drive. Anyways, we have looked at everything from, how the software works to what the hardware could be, and now also what's, how the system could actually operate of, having a water cooler and a SSD hard drive for a game. Again, everything is up in the air until Sony shows actually what the actual product is, until we see a state of play of some kind or a future of PlayStation or whatever. Rumors and leaker mill stuff. This is the reason why you can kind of debunk it in a way of like what would it look like? What are we talking about here? What is all this stuff? Because in the end, I mean, what are you looking at? Something like this? I mean, we don't know. We don't know what the package deal is going to be. Again, can developers that know how to push their game engine on certain hardware, can they push the PS5 that we have now even farther? I think so. Do we need a PS5 Pro? I think everybody who knows a lot about all the hardware and have tested hardware, not just what's on paper, because what's on paper and what you test is two different things. But when you actually test hardware out, you'll end up seeing that there is still more room to push everything. Again, it just comes down to optimizing how big the texture files are. How many animations can you have playing? How many people can you have on the screen at one time? How many, how much particle effects and, controller, the way the character, moves and everything. How much physics is on one character, on all the characters. How much physics is in the game engine itself, how much stuff is going on in the background and all that, music playing. All this stuff factors into how much system resources are, each development department has to work with. And overall, how the game is optimized in all those different, situations and settings and everything. So, yeah, are we coming up to a PS5 Pro? Maybe. I can't say for certain yes or no. It's definitely, I can tell you, I think the surefire thing that we do know is the PlayStation 6 is in development. It's probably been in development for a year or two. And these PS5 Pro rumors could very well be a PlayStation 6 development kit. And we might, and probably the final topic of conversation for this whole video, which is going to be a very long video, I can already tell. But the final topic of conversation we should be having is PlayStation 6 going to be the last console that Sony makes? Is the next Xbox going to be the last console that Xbox makes? Because that is probably the more relevant conversation to actually be having right now. Do we even so if we do one more console that uses AI solutions to do, basically the console would be running the exact same things what the PC's been running for years, and the consoles can do it at an affordable price and also something else that you could factor in there is if there is uh, uh, a removable graphics card of sorts, to where you could upgrade maybe just a graphics card for like a couple $100 every few years instead of buying a $500 console. With that, because if we make this thing even more and more like a PC, why not just have modular parts at that point, and make it so you can end up just upgrading one piece of the console? Because here's the other thing too: console manufacturing is getting super expensive to do, between you know chips and semiconductors and all that stuff. So why not just take that off the board, and then just double up game sales? We're already having so many games per month and DLC and microtransactions and this and that and the other thing. And that's where all the majority of revenue is coming from. It just would make sense to just make one more console that can do everything, have one module piece in it where you can just upgrade the graphics card a few times a year and whatnot. Maybe every 10 years have to upgrade the CPU if that really starts becoming an issue. But everything seems to be so, whenever a game is CPU bound, it's even rough on the PC. So then they end up having like Dragon's Dogma 2, once again, prime example of this. That's what was wrong with it on launch, was it was CPU bound. So then they started, pushing more of the pipeline over to the GPU, and now the game runs pretty well good. I haven't fully tested Dragon's Dogma, but from what I've seen of other people playing it fully, even in large scale battles, the game is running pretty smooth on mid range to high range hardware, which is exactly what the consoles are, is mid range to high range. So yeah, it's it just the common sense of everything is starting to kick in on all this information that we're getting. Um, I would say in the next 2 years we'll probably end up seeing a new console on the market. I would say by 2026 maybe is like that, maybe 2025 we'll see, because we actually have no idea. They could push it back a year. They, anything can happen from now until next year. um, GTA 6, I do believe, is going to run again at 60 FPS, and I think it's going to run pretty smoothly on the PlayStation 5. If we get a Pro, it'll run even smoother. But I think there could be, I mean, we know that will be a launch title for a PlayStation 6 is GTA 6. The sixes line up. um, I think that's something that we know for certain. So, anyways, crazy video, lots of information, lots of stuff to think about and go over, and yeah, yeah, we're gonna call it there though. So hit the sub button, like the video on your way out, and just be on the, again, just be very careful of any rumors or leaker mill information. That's the reason why I always do that, because put the air quotes, because there's so much information out there that people are just trying to peddle online just to make a quick buck, because they make AdSense revenue off from making posts now, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or TikTok and Instagram, you name it, everybody gets paid off from posts now. So just keep that in mind, that a lot of information on the internet is not correct when it comes to stuff that is underneath NDA, and that is the whole gaming industry for the most part. Leaks and rumor mill stuff, it's all under NDA. So somebody's getting, if those leaks are true, somebody's fired. That's just the way it works. Everybody's under these contracts to shut their mouth. If you are leaking information, just like the GTA 6 leaks and everything, somebody got majorly fired on that, and it sucked seeing it, because that just destroyed marketing. The the other thing too, actually, before I wrap up, one last final thing: the mystery of gaming is so incredibly important, because when we actually get to see this thing in action, we get to see, like, oh, it is a real thing. The excitement in the room, whether you make videos or you don't, or you're just happy to be there in the middle of the excitement of it all, let's keep that alive, because that's a very special thing to have. It only happens once every like 10 years now. So, it takes a long time for this stuff to get made and developed and everything. I mean, imagine if GTA 6 was not leaked and the trailer just dropped, how much even more excitement that would have been. It's almost at 200 million views on YouTube for the trailer. That's awesome to see. So let's keep that going. Let's keep that excitement. Let's keep that mystery going. At the same time, also do your homework on how things are made, and you can use your common sense and be like, okay, that doesn't sound right to what I know of the developers talking about over there. There's a lot of developer podcasts and developers talking about coders, art teams, all that stuff. They talk about games that have already shipped, not NDA stuff, but stuff that has already shipped and that you can literally buy right now. Those are really great podcasts to go listen to. So I highly recommend anything like that. Also, like No Clip, some stuff from Digital Foundry, just developers overall. The Rockstar game developer, I forget exactly what his name is, but just type in Rockstar game developer reacts to, you'll see his channel too. A lot of those channels are really, really cool, because they are just fans of the work that everybody else is doing around them and their own work. So, anyways, we're gonna leave it there. Again, subscribe to the channel. Be very muchly appreciated. Like, share, all that good stuff, all the YouTubey things. And yeah, I don't know how long this video is going to be, but it's probably going to be a long one. So if you're still here and you're still making it to the end, all I got left to say is I will keep on checking out all this PlayStation news and everything. I'm excited and hyped up to see what the future PlayStation is. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for stopping by. And as always, I will see you next time.